Welcome to the Lancaster Patriot Podcast, brought to you by futureofchristendom.org. My name is Chris Hume. Thank you once again for tuning in and listening to this episode. I'm recording this Friday night, November 1st, just days away from the 2024 presidential election, where, of course, Donald Trump is up against Kamala Harris. And many people are talking about this election. Many are saying, as they often say, this is the most important election of our lifetime. And so I want to discuss something related to the election. Now, a friend of mine just shared with me just about an hour or so ago a podcast that I believe was released today. I haven't listened to this podcast before. It's the Steve Deese Show. I think I'm saying that right. And on that episode, the podcast hosts were talking about the presidential election and the Amish vote, specifically in Pennsylvania, and even more specifically, they reference Lancaster County, and they do reference the story about Amos Miller and the federal and state prosecution against him. Now, I'm not an expert on the Amish. I have heard other people saying, this year it's different. The Amish are coming out in droves to support Donald Trump. I don't know if that's true. I'm going to read a couple articles, or at least portions of articles, and there's a reference in one of the articles to a billboard that I do drive by every day on my way to church. There might be more billboards, but I think that's the same one in reference that's referenced in the article. So again, I'm not an expert on the Amish, but I do live in Lancaster County, and I do believe that I have significant knowledge of the Amos Miller case, at least. I was there when the state police raided his farm earlier this year. The Lancaster Patriot broke that story. And so I want to talk about that because I think there's a little more to it than the way the Republicans are promoting this and trying to push the Amish vote. So let's start by playing this podcast from the Steve Deese Show. We're playing this clip. And then I want to look at some articles and ask the question, are the Amish coming out to support the Republican candidate and the Republican Party in general? And two, is that a good thing? Does the Republican Party stand for the Amish? Do they defend the Amish? Let's discuss that briefly. I'll try to keep this brief. It's Friday night. Got to get this done and get to bed here tomorrow. We have our big Reformation Day celebration for our church. But I wanted to do this episode because when I hear the Republicans trying to court the Amish vote, it does kind of drive me crazy because I hope after even this brief episode, you'll see the Republican Party is no friend to the Amish. Let's start with this clip, though, and we'll go from there.
Jason says, I went on a bus tour from Boston to Kansas City back in July. Both our bus driver and his girlfriend work for the Amish. Now, I want to say this. I could have done an entire Feedback Friday, maybe 2 weeks worth, just on emails I've received and messages about the Amish in the last 2 weeks since we brought up.
That's interesting.
Eli B. Flippin. The amount of opinions in this audience, man, on the Amish vote is real and spectacular. The amount of people who have expert, subject matter expert level of eyewitness accounts of the Amish in the Rust Belt states blew me away. Okay, maybe that's some live remote possibility that we have in the future.
There you go.
Live from an Amish village in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Anyway, Jason writes, I went on a bus tour from Boston to Kansas City back in July. Both our bus driver and his girlfriend work for the Amish. We toured the Amish country for a week, and they told us back then that there was a big uprising of Amish that was going to be voting in this election due to the raids on Amish farms about things like raw milk and then the push on them during COVID. P.S. I love that he adds this. P.S. I also became addicted to their peanut butter cream spread on rolls. It's worse than crack. Semper Fi, Jason. So it's not just dudes like me in the suburbs who have the sweet tooth. Even the Marine here can't get enough of the peanut butter cream roll spread from the Amish country. So
I think Amos Miller, I think that's the name of the farmer out in Lancaster who's had his operation raided by various government, both at the state and federal level. That's one of the big stories. But I know there's a lot of attention on elements like that, and I still need to see it with my own eyes. I mean, how does this compare to previous elections? Have you gotten inundated with various demographics like this?
I have files going back to 1976 of demographic election data. I must confess, the one subset I have none for is the Amish vote. I don't. I don't have a trend line for the Amish vote, man. I'm sorry, I don't. I don't have that one.
Better late than never.
So what better time to have one than right now? Okay? Listen, if the Amish can deliver us Pennsylvania, then honestly, it doesn't matter what happens in Michigan and Wisconsin. Nope. They can cheat their asses off, and we'll deal with that later on. Okay? So, and I think we should consider, if the Amish deliver for us the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, maybe we come in here, man, all three of us, one day, and we dress up like Eli B. Flippin. We honor our Amish brothers.
We should have the Amish cater a
meal
for us.
Great idea.
They can do tacos.
So it seems like those guys are from outside PA, and they're really hoping the Amish can help push Pennsylvania for Trump. If Pennsylvania votes Trump, that's obviously a big win for Trump, Pennsylvania being a swing state. But you'll notice the gist of that segment. The Amish historically don't generally vote in at least large percentage-wise based on their community. And if they do vote, I think the assumption is they're going to vote for the Republican candidate, because the idea, the talking point at least, is that the Republicans will stand for the Amish way of life and the Democrats won't. Now, I have no doubts that the Democrats are not interested in the Amish way of life or in general the idea of freedom and liberty and self-governance, which I think at least is the way a lot of people think about the Amish. Now, but my point, as I mentioned before I played that clip, is I don't believe the Republicans will defend the Amish either. And so I want to read a few articles here. Again, I'm not a subject matter expert. I think they mentioned that. I don't know if a bunch of Amish are going to come out to vote this year as opposed to last year, but I do understand what's been happening with Amos Miller, and I do understand what the Republican candidates, politicians, legislators, attorney general have been doing to Amos Miller and others like him. So I would like to briefly lay that out. Let's start with an article here just to kind of build on the general premise of the Amish vote. I've heard it a couple times here and there, not just on this podcast, but the Amish are, they're ready. They're the sleeping giant, and they're going to push Pennsylvania for Trump. This is from PBS News. This is a few days ago, October 28th, 2024. Republicans pursue support from the Amish in Pennsylvania, where only a small minority vote in elections. Let me just read a few of these. On a recent weekday afternoon, an Amish man in a horse-drawn buggy navigated through a busy intersection of auto traffic in Pennsylvania's Lancaster County, past a billboard proclaiming, "Pray for God's mercy for our nation." The billboard featured a large image of a wide-brimmed straw hat often worn by the Amish. If there was any further doubt as to its target audience, the smaller print listed the sponsors as, I'm going to say this wrong, Fear die Amish, referring to the Amish in their Pennsylvania German dialect. Researchers say most of the Amish don't register to vote, reflective of the Christian movement's historic separatism from mainstream society, just as they've maintained their dialect and horse and buggy transportation. But a small minority have voted, and the Amish are most numerous in the all-important swing state of Pennsylvania. So they're being targeted this year in the latest of decades of efforts to register more of them to vote. Republicans are seeking their votes through billboards, ads, door-to-door canvassing, and community meetings. Republican campaigners see the Amish as receptive to GOP talking points. Smaller government, less regulation, religious freedom. Okay, I'm going to continue on with this article because now that's going to quote Lloyd Smucker. And you'll see how I really feel about these Republicans in a minute here. The article goes on. This is a quote from Smucker. "They just want government to stay not only out of their businesses, but out of their religion," said U.S. Rep. Lloyd Smucker, Republican, Pennsylvania, whose district includes Lancaster County, at the heart of the nation's largest Amish population. Smucker, whose own family background is Amish, predicted a dramatic increase in the Amish vote, quote, "basing that on the enthusiasm we see." I don't know if I'll really go on here with this PBS article, but I have another article that Smucker is quoted as well. And you heard in that Steve Deese podcast correctly that Amos Miller has been under attack from both the federal government and the state government for years. For years this has been happening. I've been heavily involved in covering that story. I've spoken with Amos Miller personally countless times. I've spoken with his lawyer, Robert Barnes. So I know what's going on with Amos. At least, I hope I have a decent understanding of that. And let me tell you that the Republicans are not in support of Amos Miller. And this does not surprise me. All these guys care about is getting the vote. They don't actually care about protecting the Amish way of life. They don't care about smaller government. less regulation or religious freedom. They're frauds and hypocrites. Lloyd Smucker did absolutely nothing when Amos Miller was under attack by the federal government and the state government. Nothing. And you say, well, what is he going to do? Well, since the Democrats, he didn't have a numbers that, no public stance, no statement, nothing in support of Amos Miller. In fact, I don't know if Dave Zimmerman is mentioned in any of these articles. If you've followed my coverage of the Amos Miller story, you know that Dave Zimmerman is also a Republican representative in Lancaster County who is lauded and takes it upon himself that he is the liberty and conservative representative. He was a complete coward, as was Smucker and Mastriano and all these Republicans, and refused to stand up to Russell Redding, refused to take the opportunity that they had in their lifetime to stand with the Amish and non-Amish for food freedom, to defy Russell Redding's tyrannical edict that you weren't allowed to buy milk from Amos Miller. They all cowered. None of them had the balls to do the courageous thing and just drink a cup of milk on Amos's farm. I'm not going to get into Zimmerman. I have multiple podcasts on that. I'll put them in the description. Check them out. Zimmerman later came out and said, well, I'm gonna try to put forward some legislation that would, make it a little bit easier for these Amish to submit to regulations. It's a joke. These Republicans do not care about freedom or the Amish. All they care about is getting the vote. And it's unfortunate that many of the Amish, I will say this, I am confident on this point, many of the Amish do not agree with what Amos Miller was doing. And that's, I think, something that people might not be aware of, that people looking at it from the outside might say, well, all the Amish, they're behind Amos Miller because this is just what they do. They want to serve their neighbor and they want to be free from government regulation. I don't know the percentage, but I know there's a serious percent of the Amish, and certainly a powerful faction, if you will, that did not like what Amos Miller did, that did not like that Amos Miller did not simply toe the line and follow every single government regulation from D.C. and Harrisburg in order to serve his neighbor. I don't know if it's the majority, but certainly there are many Amish that were not fans of what Amos Miller was doing, and that's another story we can get into. But let's carry on with this. I want to read something else here. This is from today, an article from today from WFIN.com, and the title is Pennsylvania's Amish are a key yet hesitant voting bloc. Pressing issues may benefit Trump, some say. All right, let me just read a little bit of this. Pennsylvania's election is likely to go down to the wire Tuesday, meaning support from the Commonwealth's sizable yet traditionally private Amish community might just make a difference. The Amish Mennonite community has long been a reliably conservative group, given its devout faith, humility, and reluctance to engage with aspects of contemporary societal norms, such as driving cars and using cell phones. And we're going to get to Smucker again here. Representative Lloyd Smucker, the first Amish-born member of Congress, said he's seeing a real change lately. Quote, you have a minority of the Amish who are now farming and agricultural. They ran out of land in Lancaster County a long time ago, so there's a new generation of Amish who are business owners, he said. So they're becoming much more engaged politically than their parents were, end quote. A report from Elizabethtown College estimated 90,000 Amish live in Pennsylvania and 84,000 live in Ohio, in addition to sizable populations in Indiana, Wisconsin, New York, and Missouri. Smucker said there were 1,500 to 2,000 new voter registrants in his district who are Amish, adding he expects thousands more to cast ballots this cycle. Two former presidents, George W. Bush and Donald Trump, actively canvassed the community, which by and large doesn't vote due to customs surrounding privacy. Bush visited Smoketown during his 2004 campaign, meeting with Amish leaders without photographers out of respect of religious customs. Go on and on. Let me skip down here a little bit. Smucker said while Bush and Trump have had most of the Amish attention, the Amish were very politically active in the 1950s when compulsory age-based education was an issue for youth who often returned to farming. By the way, I'll mention there, that is one of the things that I did talk to Amos Miller about, and also talked to at least one other Amishman about, that there was so much pushback from the Amish community against Amos Miller, saying just toe the line, just do what the government says, just roll over here. And Amos Miller saying, I can't do this. If I give up here, it's sort of like the government school thing. The Amish took a stand in the 1950s. They were generally united then and said, we will not bow to these regulations. and they won that. But now, a lot of the Amish are saying, Amos Miller, don't worry about the farming thing. Just let the government continue to regulate us out of existence. And Amos Miller saying, no, I need to take a stand here, because if the government can control how we feed our neighbors, how we serve our neighbors, and how we farm, you want the government, and this again goes to the whole natural law thing. You want the government experts who know what's best for the common good to tell you what kind of food to eat and how your farmer needs to prepare it. My goodness. So Amos Miller said, no, I don't agree with the whole way. He's fighting it. I wish that he would have had a more public civil disobedience type thing. Of course, there were no civil leaders to stand with him. They're all cowards. They were all a bunch of effeminate wussies who were unwilling to go on Amos Miller's farm and defy Russell Redding. A whole lot of them, Rep. Zimmerman, Tom Jones, Smucker, Mastriano, none of those guys are worth their salt. So anyway, I digress there. Let me go on here a little bit. Let's see. Okay. Pressler, that Pressler person, who's this Scott Pressler, strange individual. In a tweet, Pressler also pointed to Democrat officials. Okay, actually, let me go back here. Today, Trump signs sit on some farms and occasionally on a horse and buggy clip-clopping down Old Philly Pike in Burdenhand. Burdenhand is where Amos Miller's farm is. Many Fridays, Republican activist Scott Pressler registered voters at the Green Dragon Farmers Market in Ephrata, where he told Fox News Digital the Amish he's interacted with have been very fervent in their support of Trump. In a tweet, Pressler also pointed to Democrat officials who investigated Amish farmer Amos Miller over his raw milk sales. The case drew national attention from the likes of Representative Thomas Massie from Kentucky, who called the litigation shameful. Donald Trump Jr. also lambasted a raid on Miller's property, saying he can't be the only person sick of this blank. Asked whether the government run-ins with Miller inspired new political enthusiasm, listen to Smucker here. Smucker said other dairymen have found ways to comply with the law, but the intrusion into Miller's business was not well taken. Yes, Amos Miller was a good case of that, but there are plenty of others that the Amish can point to as well, he said. Okay, so there, of course, Smucker is not going to say, what they did to Amos Miller was wrong. He's not going to say that. He's going to say the same thing that Rep. Zimmerman and all these guys will say. Well, why can't Amos just follow the law? Why can't he just do what he's told? We're a system of laws, and it'll violate our justice system if Amos Miller is able to sell his milk to his neighbor. But, we celebrate Rosa Parks, who defied the law. We celebrate the Boston Tea Party, But today, you can't defy any man-made laws because, we're in Harrisburg, we're in D.C., we make them, and you got to do what we say. Okay, so there's two articles. And so the main point from those, although there's a lot of other things we've talked about, is that the Republicans are really looking to court this Amish vote. And the assumption is the Amish should vote Republican. I mean, and you look here in this article. I mean, I don't know this is secondhand, but it says that they quote in a tweet, Pressler pointed to Democratic officials who investigated Amish farmer Amos Miller over his raw milk sales. And that's one of the things that frustrates me when you have kind of these shows and podcasts and videos who will come out and say, "Oh, look at the Democrats! That this was under Josh Shapiro going after Amos Miller. It's the Democrats got to get the Republicans in there because otherwise, these Amish are going to be prosecuted and persecuted, and we're for a small government." Okay, that's just not true. I've mentioned already that no Republican was willing to stand with Amos Miller, but let's go back even further. Let's go back to 2019. If you know the Amos Miller story, you'll note that the state prosecution started, that was kind of this year. That's the big story, and it's continuing. It's not over yet. And Amos is trying to fight it through the courts, and, I think it would have been a completely different story if you had civil leaders and the public was ready, but Amos was not, because of his legal team and also his Amish community did not want him to practice a public civil disobedience. I believe if that would have happened, and maybe then some of these cowardly politicians who only care about their votes, like Rep. Zimmerman, Tom Jones, Mike Jones, all these guys, Smucker, maybe then if they were pressured by the people, by their voters, then maybe they would have came and stood with Amos Miller. I think this would have been a completely different story. But now Amos is just embroiled in the statist legal system. And I sat through hours of the court hearing here in Lancaster County where the judge said, I just got to follow the law from Harrisburg. It doesn't really matter, essentially, if people need your products to survive. If you didn't follow the state law, you're not allowed to sell your products. Okay, but this is a press release from Wednesday, November 20th, 2019. Let's go back here. Let's go to April. I'm going to do a press release from April of 2019. Civil lawsuit filed to enjoin local farms continuing misbranding of meat, poultry products, and evasion of food safety laws. All right, so this is when the federal government was seriously involved in prosecuting Amos Miller. And this was related to more of his meat sales. The state issue is more about milk, but there's some overlap. But listen to this press release. United States Attorney William M. McSwain announced today that his office has filed a civil lawsuit to enjoin Miller's Organic Farm of Burdenham, Pennsylvania, and its owner, Amos Miller, from continuing to violate federal food safety laws. The violations include Miller selling non-federally inspected, misbranded meat and poultry products to consumers located throughout the United States. Let's see. Let's go on here. We're going to quote from, this is the U.S. Attorney McSwain at the time, and he says this, quote, "With today's lawsuit, food establishments in this district are on further notice that my office will not ignore efforts to evade federal food safety laws and to hinder agencies like FSIS from carrying out their public safety mission," said U.S. Attorney McSwain. "We will not allow commercial sellers to ignore the rule of law, make up their own set of rules, and attempt to hide behind a private membership association structure in an effort to thwart federal laws. Congress enacted food safety laws to ensure that the nation's food supply is safe, wholesome, and properly labeled and packaged. It's our job to enforce those democratically enacted laws, which we will do in this case," end quote. Wow, must be a Democrat, appointed attorney general there, just going after the Amish. And, now if we can get the Amish out to vote and get Trump elected, this stuff won't happen. There's only one problem with that. William McSwain is a Republican who served under Trump's administration, and Trump had no problem with this. And you might say, well, maybe he didn't know. Okay, maybe he didn't know. But my point is that the Republicans do know about it. McSwain was a Republican. I'm not sure if he was appointed by Trump. I do have to look that up, although I do have an article here about Trump. Trump eventually got really annoyed with McSwain, and we will see why. Let me see here. I should probably know this stuff, but there's so many of these political offices. Yes, President Donald Trump nominated McSwain to be the United States Attorney for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania, and the nomination was received in the Senate on December 21st, 2017. Okay, so William McSwain appointed by President Donald Trump, the Attorney General, who led the charge against Amos Miller. I personally don't understand. Maybe some people are totally ignorant of this, and I get that. But once you understand this, I just personally have no idea why people think that the Republican Party, and including Donald Trump, has any interest in the Amish way of life, in personal freedom, in liberty, and is not simply just a slightly different version of the Nanny State that is propagated by the Democrats. It doesn't make sense to me. Okay, so McSwain, appointed by Donald Trump, he stepped down, I guess, at some point. Let's see here. U.S. Attorney McSwain announces resignation. U.S. McSwain, let's see, he was served as the chief federal law enforcement officer in the Eastern District of Pennsylvania since April 6, 2018. Will step down on January 22nd, 2021. And he said this, "I want to thank President Trump for appointing me as U.S. Attorney, Senators Toomey and Casey for recommending me for the position, and Attorneys General Barr and Sessions for leading the Department of Justice during my service. I will always be grateful to have had the opportunity to serve as the U.S. Attorney in the district in which I have lived most of my life, in the city in which I was born, and in the office where I learned to be a trial lawyer as an assistant U.S. Attorney." Okay, I can't go on there and read this guy. I met McSwain, I believe, in person because he ran for governor, and of course, none of these governors are worth my vote. None of them would stand for Amos Miller. It's all a charade. The whole Republican Party, it's just a complete ruse. Okay, so I want to kind of wrap this up. I do want to read a brief portion of this article. Former President Donald Trump slams Bill McSwain, who'd sought his endorsement for Pennsylvania governor. Okay, this is from April 12th, 2022. Listen to why Trump is upset with McSwain. I would hope it would be, "You idiot, you went after Amos Miller. Why would you do that? The guy's just serving his neighbor, selling him some steaks. Why can't you go after murderers and rapists?" That wasn't Trump's problem with McSwain. Former President Donald Trump slammed Pennsylvania GOP gubernatorial candidate Bill McSwain on Tuesday, complaining the former federal prosecutor did absolutely nothing to investigate Trump's false claims of widespread election fraud after Democrat Joe Biden won the state in 2020. Obviously, CBS News here tipping their hand on what they think happened in the election. Let's see here. But this is a quote from Trump. One person in Pennsylvania who I will not be endorsing is Bill McSwain for governor. He was the U.S. attorney who did absolutely nothing on the massive election fraud that took place in Philadelphia and throughout the Commonwealth, Trump said in a statement. Do not vote for Bill McSwain, a coward who let our country down. He knew what was happening and let it go. All right, so Trump obviously upset there. Be that as it may, he is not concerned about the Amish. McSwain's not. Trump's not, Zimmerman's not, Smucker's not, Mastriano's not. None of these people are, because they are continuing to propagate this man-made system, this nanny state. And, if the Amish, it's again, I think it's a false hope for the non-Amish. It's a false hope for the Amish. The Republicans are not your friends. The Republicans, they will continue to put their attorney generals in there. They will continue to be slaves to the man-made law in Harrisburg, the Food Safety Act, and they will continue to regulate us and continue to be the nanny state. They'll continue to promote that system. So, will the Amish turn out in droves to vote for Trump? I don't know. To be honest, it doesn't really matter when it comes to whether or not they're going to be able to continue their way of life. The only way they can continue that, and you and I can be free to also be self-governed, whether you're Amish or not, and drive a buggy or wear a hat. That doesn't matter. The issue is, can you be self-governed? Can you serve your neighbor? Can you sell your neighbor milk without the state breathing down your neck and telling you how to do it? Do you want the cult of experts, the legislators who have more knowledge than you and I of what's good for us in terms of what we eat and how our farmers should prepare it? Do you want those people making the decisions, or do you want to be able to choose for yourself and for your family what to eat and where to buy your food? And the Republicans are not on the side of food freedom. And especially when it comes to this Amish issue, people are bringing up this Amos Miller thing. And you could, even in the article of Smucker, it's like, hey, he doesn't really want to come out and say what he probably has said elsewhere, like Zimmerman has said, no, Amos Miller was wrong. He kind of wants to court that vote. Okay, well, yeah, the Amos Miller situation, that did raise some concerns. And so, we don't want to vote for the Democrats because, they're not going to help the Amish. You will do nothing, and I think you'll make it even worse. I think it's this false hope. I think it makes things worse. It makes people think that we're going in a good direction, and it makes them think that my responsibility is to vote Republican because, especially as it relates to the Amish, because if I don't vote Republican, then we're going to continue to be prosecuted by the state and federal government. That it makes no difference really if they're Republican or Democrat. I mean, I think I've just shown that. It was a Republican, Trump-appointed attorney general who went after Amos Miller. It's Republicans like Zimmerman, like Smucker, who will vote for bills that call on the government to regulate our food supply. Anyway, I could go on. I mean, I have a ton of articles and podcast episodes on the Amos Miller story, specifically on local Representative Dave Zimmerman's cowardice. So, yeah, maybe the Amish will turn out in droves to vote. Unfortunately, what I care most about as it relates to the Amish is that they would be left free, just like that's my desire for you and your family, that you would be left free to serve your neighbor without the government punishing you for non-evil acts. And unfortunately, both the Democrat apparatus and the Republican apparatus are about the same thing. They're in the business of regulating our lives by man-made legislation, and the promises they make are 99.9% of the times, if not 100% of the time, within the statist system. And they're trying to give you a carrot to say, vote for us because our statist solution is better. Vote for us, and we, you register your children with the state, and we'll give you a tax break. Vote for us, and we'll make better laws about food regulation. They can still be used by the Republican Attorney General to prosecute you, but they're going to be a little better than the ones we have now. That's like what Zimmerman wants to promote. Well, we should allow, because in Pennsylvania, by the way, you're not allowed to sell raw butter at all. And so maybe the Republicans say, well, we're going to come in there and we're going to make a law that says you're allowed to sell raw butter if you get inspected by the state, register with the state, pay your fines. And you see, we're about freedom. No, you're not. You're about regulation in the nanny state. Anyway, that's all for today. The Republican Party, especially in Pennsylvania, and the Attorney General that was appointed by Trump and the legislators are not for the Amish. They are not for Amos Miller. They are for the regulatory nanny state. So, but just think about why there would be this lack of knowledge of this, lack of understanding, because I think we want so badly, or at least some people do, want so badly for the Republicans to be the good guys because we see how bad the Democrats are. But I think until we see that the problem is not with the Democrat Party, the problem is with the unbiblical, unjust system that both the Republicans and the Democrats love. They love to have it so. They get in power, then they get to use the power for their ends, and it's an unbiblical power. So there's nothing wrong with a magistrate ruling justly and applying God's law. But when you have an unbiblical power structure or system, like the papacy, as I've mentioned before, the solution isn't to get someone else in there. The solution is to call on the people to stop relying on this system to bring you justice. And what the Republicans are trying to do here, and what many people are hoping that they can do, is get the Amish to say, well, yes, we need the Republicans to establish justice for us in our community, and they will not do it. We've seen that. We've seen it. They haven't done it, and they will continue to prosecute not just the Amish, but you and I for serving our neighbor. So anyway, that's it for tonight. While this might come out next day for most people, I'll try to get it out early for our patrons. If you're not a patron and you'd like to get early access and also bonus content, including our book club, about to release those episodes, book on covenant theology, and then we're going to do Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. And then a friend gave me this book by Dr. Steve Turley, Fight, How Trump and the MAGA Movement Are Changing the World. So I'm also going to do this book, so that might be interesting. So again, if you want to support the show and get early access and bonus content, go to patreon.com/the Lancaster Patriot. And if you want to learn more about the Amos Miller story, I'll try to put some of the videos in the description here. But don't be duped. Don't be fooled by these Republicans. You know, I understand the Democrats, you know, it's tough. And I understand it's tough in this election season, you know, at the polls. You have one party that is socialistic, that wants to, you know, force you to pay for the government-run school system, that is operating on many of the planks of the Communist Manifesto. You have that party, and then over here you have the Democrats. So I get it, you know, this is difficult. You say, well, which one should I choose? They're both bad, and I don't think the solution is a turn to the Republican Party. I just have no confidence, especially when it comes to this Amish issue, that the Republicans care about the Amish. They care more about maintaining their positions and following the man-made system. And if that ruins an Amish person's life, so be it. So, all right, we'll see what happens. I will say one thing, it is interesting. And whether Harris or Trump wins, we're going to have the same as much as I can, I'm going to be trying to focus on the same exact thing. These people in Lancaster County, where I live, these Amish, non-Amish, and the statist system we have, and the people that are willing to prosecute, persecute, tyrannize their neighbors, that has to change. Trump being elected or Harris being elected will not change that. We need a complete reformation, and we need people's hearts and minds to be changed to realize what the problem is and then realize what the solution is. And I'll tell you, for the Amish, it's not voting GOP. It's not gonna help them. Okay, so thanks for listening. Again, for more information, you can go to futureofchristendom.org. You'll find all these podcasts there and many more. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, remember that Christ, not the GOP party, not a Donald Trump appointed U.S. Attorney General, is king. So long.